through in terms of respective words and behaviors and environments so that it is that people are basically respected. And so I think it all boils down to respect. Because if I don't respect you, I treat you a certain way and I talk to you a certain way. However, with that all being said, in terms of us, building towards um, businesses, having that understanding of what's required within the industry and by the government will allow for us to actually begin that journey. But it's going to take, time to get there. And so, are we willing to invest that time to get to that next level? Is the question.
That's that's a really good point. Educating ourselves on the things that we need is always important to walk with that knowledge, so we're to make sure that we're doing it, correctly. But I just want to add once again that it doesn't take much to hire someone, and you can build up a business pretty fast. It just takes time. You got to put in the hours. And I learned that from my son. He has a store. He said, Dad, I sat here for 2 years, and I hardly had any customers, but the ones that I had were loyal, so I kept it open, and now I'm flourishing. So that's the other part that is, we have to learn to be patient, because
Absolutely.
in business, instant gratification a lot of times is not what you're going to get, but you'll be able to earn, you have sustainability. And it's good to build up your business so you can employ one or two people, because if you get sick or if you got to travel or something, you have people that you can trust that can run the business for you. So yeah, but yeah, I'm so happy, to be here. And just while I'm on the air right now, I just want to give a huge shout out to brother Modaris Jihad, formerly Daryl Brown. He's been a great inspiration to me and a great mentor. So, brother, I just wanted to say that publicly, man, that you have been a great influence on me, man. So thank you. And the other,
Louise,
and the
did
other,
he work at Weaver as
yes,
a history teacher?
yeah,
He was my history teacher.
man. Listen, that's a phenomenal. And I'm just gonna keep saying it every week, Dr. Maya. We have some incredible talent right in our midst. I mean, we listen. I keep telling people about this. They don't know who I'm talking about anyway, but I know. We had a brother in Hartford named uh, Abdul Muhammad Senior. Right? He
Mm-hmm.
wrote he wrote the curriculum for Dr. John Henry Clark, the foremost authority on African and African American history. And we had Mr. Muhammad right in our midst. Brother died. They had some little, paltry service for him, and nobody really, really spoke about, his greatness. It's a brother that must be elevated because of the things that he brought to the table in terms of knowledge, education, from our perspective, not from a European perspective. So we have great talent right here in our city, you know.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the next mural should actually be about all of our great educators, Harvard educators, people of color, honoring them.
I would
Um,
say, I would say,
Go
I,
ahead.
I don't know how I feel about that word,
Okay.
you
What?
know.
Great or educators?
Well, because, and I don't want to offend anybody, Dr. Maya. I know you're a teacher. I was in education for a long time. But, I was listening, and I listened to a lot of old, the old teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a brother named James Smalls who is absolutely phenomenal. He's a must listen to type of guy. He has some stuff on YouTube and Facebook, and we have to learn. And I agree. He says that education in this country is disrespectful and offensive to African and indigenous cultures. So I would say that I want to use a term where people that are not directly in education but are educating, are part of that mural that you're talking about.
Well,
Absolutely. I mean,
Do you
no matter
understand? Do you
what
understand what
term,
I'm saying, Dr. Maya?
I get the vein of thought that you're using in terms of changing up the concept. I I view myself as an educationist, someone engaged in educating. The the system as it is, disrespectful, yes, yes, it is. However, when it is that we have a lot of power within our own households to take on um, many of the aspects of educating our own children, per how it is that we would like for them to think and behave. We can't holistically blame the education system, because if we don't do our part, then we already know with the disrespect within that system what they are not doing. And so we have to fill in that gap. So we can't consistently look at the system as being the problem. What are we doing at home, is another issue, because they start with us. Our kids start with us. And so it's what we put in them in terms of a foundation that's going to make the difference, no matter what system they go into. So, I mean, yeah, disrespectful, it is. However, we can fill in the foundation and any gaps if we choose to do that. And so, every household, respectively, has their own particular type of influence that they pour into their child or children. And so, blaming the blame game is becoming really tired and played out from my perspective, right? Because if it is that one is not doing their own specific part in filling in gaps that they see that they have control of, then looking at outside forces as the problem holistically is not going to resolve those issues, because the system is bigger than us in terms of what they are designed to do. So, for example, a car is designed to take you from point A to point B based on its mechanical design and what fuel you actually use. But, with us not being a part of the foundational design of the education system, then yes, the disrespect is there. But again, we have the power to fill in those gaps in our respective households.
I love that response, Dr. Maya. It's so powerful because it sends a message that you definitely acknowledge all the societal ills that we face every day, and you still say we must overcome all of that.
Absolutely.
We can't let that become a barrier. We have to figure out ways. We have to use our ingenuity, to create what I call safe spaces where we can exist and continue to be creative and build and excel. Absolutely. So yes, that's a powerful message, Dr. Maya.
I think back to the original the original comment of the murals. I think that because you brought up great educators here, and so to memorialize them and to keep them ever present in the minds of people, they need to be made aware of. Otherwise, people won't know of them.
I'm not throwing any shade on anyone. Okay, but and the murals that I'm talking about,
right,
would be people that the community picks, because they got some murals going around Connecticut.
Right, but you mentioned some great people. So
Absolutely.
By virtue of the fact that you mentioned one, those are two great people who could have a mural made. I mean, because murals are going to be very subjective. Murals are an inexpensive art form. They're not cast in bronze and put in the middle of the town square.
They're not a statue.
They're not a statue. They are kind of statues. They're just not as expensive. But it's an expression by someone of someone. It's dear to the person who put it there. It may not be dear years down the road. dare I say, if we had a statue of Michael Sharp, folk would be up in arms right now because of circumstances surrounding his contribution to education being clouded by his personal,
contribution to the criminal justice system.
Deviant behavior. Scripturally, he should be stoned to death. That's just thus saith stand, not necessarily the. So I think it's very subjective. The people, however,
what's funny about that story you just told, Stan, that his mother could potentially be one of the people on that mural.
His mother was a great educator.
She was.
But she is a sovereign in and of herself.
Yes.
Her children, like mine, can do as they so please. You're not responsible for your children once they become of age where they become accountable for their own behavior. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe if that were the case, there would be a whole lot of parents dead. If you were going to be directly tied to the actions of your children.
Don't go that far, Stan. Don't go that far. That shooter, you know what I'm talking about, Dr. Maya, that shooter?
There's a parent right now.
No, there's two of them.
Right, the mom and dad.
Yes, they're going to be held accountable because they didn't get her mental health. They didn't put the guns away properly. So don't, and I like that kind of stuff.
Well, that's.
I like that.
It
helps you to become a better parent.
Is he accountable for, are they accountable? Let me rephrase that. Was he accountable for his actions, or is he under their wing of protection and responsibility? I think at some age, parents are responsible for their kids. And so what becomes the determining factor?
Well, I think that it doesn't go like that, Stan, because even if you're an adult, even if you have a man or a woman at home who's your child, and they're an adult, they've never displayed any signs of mental health, but you have those things in place. You have guns that are out and other things that may be in place that you're kind of almost facilitating something like that happening. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
so you gotta be careful with that, man.
I think this is a worthwhile thing for many, many people to consider because precedents are being set. Mm-hmm. We're dealing with mental Hartford does, but then the United States has an issue with mental health. It has for a long time, and so there's a lot of focus. Now, you could be committed very, very easily if you step outside the boundaries of what folks say is rational behavior. So then it becomes very subjective. Now, if in the historical context of how certain people have been treated in this country, there are people in prison who are innocent. Mm-hmm. Okay, because the evidence was either falsified or, unfortunately, cast a light upon them where a jury found them guilty of a crime that they actually did not commit, because the system is not perfect. All right. So when it comes down to things like your mental stability, who is the arbiter? Who gets to decide who is mentally capable and who isn't? People are going to be able to do that for your kids in school. Well, your child needs to be on Ritalin, or your child doesn't have a proper behavior in school, and we suggest he be on this drug. Mm-hmm. And parents are very intimidated. Well, they're the educational experts. Well, maybe we should. So then now your child has never displayed anything even remotely toward acting up and going out and doing mass murder. There have been guns in your house or whatever forever, particularly in rural America where guns are part of the lifestyle. You hunt.
Yeah, they're part of their lifestyle. Like the video games are part of our kids' lifestyle.
Right. So, and I'm not trying to justify anything. The picture I'm trying to paint is, when do you become responsible for another human being's actions, and when are they
It's already written in the law.
for their actions?
It's already written in the law. We just don't look at it like that. But it's already written in the law, Stan, that if I see you commit a crime, I'm supposed to report it.
Oh, that's different.
Well, I'm going somewhere with
All
this.
right, go
So
on.
now, if you have these things available in your house, and they're not locked up like they're supposed to be, and someone who's never displayed that kind of behavior goes out and does something, there may be, I don't know, I wouldn't agree with it, but there may be some ground where you could be held accountable for not having that stuff locked up.
I know bartenders, bar folk are accountable if somebody
Well, what's the same
gets
thing?
drunk in your
Right,
bar and they
right.
go out and hit somebody.
Well, you're serving them because you're
You're
serving them, and you know they're drunk. They had their limit, and you serve them, yeah, and you should be accountable for that. You know what you're doing. I believe that the people, it's like I always say with the police, if there's two policemen and one of them is committing a crime and the other one is watching, but he's not doing it, but he's not doing nothing about it, the guy that's watching is worse than the guy who's doing it, because the guy who's doing it is in it. You know what I'm saying?
a
He's
willing
not rational
participant.
anymore.
I think of him as as he has the power to stop this,
And he's worse to me.
and he doesn't. So he's being held. I think of him as being accountable for his own action, which is inaction.
In action, yeah.
He's not accountable for what the other guy did.
Right.
He's accountable for what he's
And in my
done.
eyes, he's worse. So if we give the first cop 3 years for the crime, we got to give the guy who was watching 5.
I don't have a problem with that.
Right? Because now in the future, everybody who's watching know what they got to do.
Let
Cops.
me
I'm talking about
swerve
cops.
into the lane. Let me swerve into the lane with this, right? So in school environments, I had to sign off on being a mandated reporter, right, of any wrongdoings, based on ethical behaviors to be displayed with young children. Now, why is mandated reporting not part of the policing system? From a historical perspective, we pretty much know the answer, so that's really rhetorical. Now, based on going back just a little bit, when it is that we start looking at the end all be all of who determines who has good mental health and who has not so good mental health, let's look at the education system in terms of teachers recommending specifics in terms of psychological and behavioral issues being addressed through medications, right? So if it is that a school's record, a child's record in the school system goes from one grade to the next, who's writing this narrative and what type of real expertise do they actually have? Because let's put it this way: if a student is quiet, and from the perspective of a teacher, this is a problem, quote unquote problem, and then they recommend either special ed or medication or special medication, special ed or special medication. What gives them the real authority to actually do that? Maybe the student is just an introvert, right? Why is it that the extremes are doled out? Why is it that the individuality of the actual student not taken into perspective? Kids will be kids. You can't keep a kid in a seat for all those number of hours and not think that they're going to get antsy, right? They're going to get itchy. They're going to get fidgety. The thing that I'm seeing is that the structure with dealing with children from all ages is being more punitive on kids than necessary, from the perspective that if it is that we really want to get the best out of our students, and if we really do respect our students for being individuals, then why is it that how things are structured, they're not really and truly being respected as individuals in those classrooms? Now, there are degrees of everything, in regards to proper behavior and improper behavior, proper language and improper language, right? We know that. However, if we look at the foundational elements regarding how it's structured, it's really and truly to get them accustomed to a certain type of thinking and behavior. Jane Elliott spoke of this, and I love this woman. Um, it's indoctrination and not education. And so, if I'm going to have you to sit and be quiet for, let's say, 3 to 4 hours, we do a little activity. That right there, by design, is a routine that becomes embedded within how it is that students become socialized throughout the educational system and then transition into this work environment whereby pretty much the same thing goes on. And so it's a strategy behind the madness and methodologies that are actually being used. And I did call it madness because when you think about it, as individuals, we all go into our different pathways. And so when you're dealing with bringing kids into the socialization aspect as they transition into adulthood, what are we really saying if it is that we're penalizing students unjustifiably, unjustifiable penalization of students based on their behaviors, right? And so if you're classifying and coding students erroneously, that's a stigma. And then we start to see that they start to actualize sometimes, meaning that they become what it is that you keep stating that they are, right? So if you say somebody is mentally challenged throughout, let's say, 13 years of their, going through a system, if it is their personality, they have internalized that so much that they believe that and they start acting in that way. So it's a really thin line between how it is
that happened to you too, Dr. Maya.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly what you're describing happened to you.
It's a thin line between how it is that we see our educational system as this place where education or educating of our students is supposed to actually occur. However, we have to really start to think about what are they actually walking away with after 13 years of being in a system, right? Because they've been socialized as well as exposed to individuals who have either respected them or disrespected them, either physically or verbally, over the course of those 13 years.
Or sexually.
So, hey, physically, because you can't have the sexual aspect without the physical. So it's all inclusive. So no matter how it is that they have been impacted or exposed to certain things, we have to really start to think about how it is that we look at what is being presented to us. Because again, it's a huge system with historical foundations. And every time you roll back the curtains on the history of it, in 2022, it begins to make more and more sense of why things are the way they are. Now, the power that we have is to determine how to adjust for and make certain moves against what currently is that's too big for us individually to actually change. Now, here it is, we're in voting season. If anybody makes an excuse for not to vote, given that they do have the right to vote, then that right there is part of why it is we see certain things in play, right? So we can't negate the type of power that we have individually as well as collectively. You can't spell unity without, or excuse me, community without unity. And so when are we going to begin to look at self in terms of the power we have, and then look at how it is that we can link up with others in order to make a collective community effort to get things changed? That's a good question.
Well, I think that when we learn our history, Dr. Maya, we get rid of the mystery.
Okay.
And so this is where I'm at with this.
Okay.
I've said it before on the show, education is nothing more than a farm system for the corporations. You know what I'm saying? We're not really getting educated because education is not memorizing stuff. You know what I'm saying? If that's what you're doing, then you're just repeating what other. It's like I say, if you're not reading every day, you're just repeating what other people say. So education has to be different. And in terms of the these words, Dr. James Smalls talked about this. He said, "What is attention deficit disorder?" He said, "Those are words with a definition, and why do white folks get to give them that definition?" You know, many of us have a different definition
So for the
of
sake,
what that would look like.
right. So for the sake of discussion, what would you call what they call attention deficit disorder?
Well, I think that first of all, I wouldn't label it like that. I would have to think about that. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a lot. I talk about this on the show all the time, creating our own language. You know, what would that look like for us? What would that look like?
I got something for that.
Okay, bring it, sister, bring it.
I call it being easily distracted, right? We've got, let's put it this way, especially in this world of technology, we've got a lot of things drawing our attention in different directions, right? And so think about it. In a commercial segment, so you might be watching a TV show, just as an example, and you've got, you know, the commercials that come on, and then you get back into the actual TV segment that you're watching. Now, think about how we get things in like kind of like sound bites. Boom, boom, on to the next. So one story is this, boom, nothing really unpacked to the fullest extent. Then you got something else coming up. Then you got something else coming up. Then you throw into social media where you've got little snippets of people posting this, TikTok. There's so many things that are impacting how we are able to manage our focus, myself included, right? Just think about it. We're like accustomed to being getting our deliverables from the perspective of the microwave, right? 2 minutes and it's done, right? But at the short and long end of looking at it, right? Instead of, you know, really just saying, oh, they've got attention deficit disorder. This is psychological warfare. It's a play on words that then allows for the greenbacks to be actually earned, right? So there's money tied to the concepts that are being used, right? So just follow the money trail is what they say. Right? So each and every classification, think about this, because if we eliminated race, that means that we only include the entirety of humanity, no race classification. But then how would that impact the money? This is why these classifications exist.
Right. Money. Follow the money trail. But at the end of the day, it's a certain behavior. So if we're talking about how someone is behaving or what they are doing, because someone calls it a particular thing, it's just a way to communicate thoughts, ideas, and notions. Calling it something different doesn't change it from what it is.
True.
But if you classify it, as you mentioned, particularly if it's a disorder, you can now come up with the justification to use a corrective measure, which is going to cost money, either in the way you approach individuals or in some sort of medication that you can give them. At the end of the day, they're unfocused. And so a better teacher could find a way to get them focused. But, you know, every student isn't the same.
I don't agree with that at all, Stan.
Well,
there is no such thing as a better teacher.
There is a such thing as a better teacher.
It
there absolutely is.
There,
we may not, we get into semantics. So you don't want to classify one teacher as being better than the other. That's cool.
It's not that. It's just that it doesn't matter how good you think a teacher is. The only thing that matters is how effective they are in getting that information out to the students.
So if all the
in a way
teachers
that
in the
they
building are
understand
white
it.
teachers and they're effective, we can keep them.
No,
But I think
it's different. It's
semantically,
different
So-
than
so-
that.
semantically, Lou,
Right,
you're
right.
saying the same thing we're saying.
Right.
You-
So
you're
you're
just
just
using different
calling it
language.
different. You're just calling it a different thing. Some teachers,
I'm using
you can-
indigenous,
you-
Afrocentric ideas to describe what I'm doing.
all right. Well,
You're using the words that you know and the ideas that
right,
you know.
right. So in Stan's world, some teachers are not as good as others. No one's going to get me to change my mind or back me down. Some teachers don't belong in a classroom
Those are
because
not
they are.
teachers.
You can call them whatever you want, Lou. They aren't teachers. They're acting in the role of a teacher in a classroom before students.
Doesn't that sound better?
If that works for you,
Wordy.
it's just
Wordy.
semantics. You know, we're not going to call the dog. This got his mouth around my neck. That's not a dog. It's a canine. Now, if you talk to it differently and call it something different, maybe and then the bite on your neck could be less intense. No. You know,
We're gonna get you there,
So.
Stan.
both of these phones are exactly the same. They're the exact same phone. They were created equal. They're created equal.
Yeah, but
But what's
change
in them is
Yeah.
totally different.
That's what I'm
Because
talking about.
this phone is they're both mine. But I put different things in them. Now if I give one to you and you bring it back here tomorrow, it's going to be totally different from this phone. They all come from the factory the same. They're the same. What they're exposed to is different. And to expect them to act the same, to have the same data, the same information, would be ludicrous. This one could be programmed by a person from Russia. This one could be, accessed by somebody from Senegal. The languages are going to be different. The ideas, notions, and concepts that they communicate about might be the same, but they're, and so people are created equally, but people are exposed to different things. And I think we have to start to respect where people are coming from and understand them rather than I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to reprogram this phone.
I think
Until
it
this
boils down
phone
to respect.
changes, it can't be with the rest of us because it
Green
holds
arrow
different
points to
information. We have to. I think we need to be a little bit more tolerant of other people's differences. And I don't know that it's.
we could be tolerant as long as they don't hurt us, Stan.
I'm not
Do
gonna
no
let
harm.
nobody hurt me.
Absolutely.
I'm not
But
gonna
we
let
have to-
nobody
but
hurt
we
me.
have to say stuff like that. We have
Right.
to be clear about what we mean by that. It's like a little while ago when Dr. Maya said that, this is historical, but historical in what way? I think people want to know that when you make a reference to something being historical, we should give them a reference to what we mean, because we have a lot of listeners and a lot of viewers that, like you always say, Stan, that may not really, get the gist of what message we're trying to, put out there.
Well, I think if
From a historical perspective, right, or rather an educational perspective, my thoughts in using the term historical means that if you want to identify the source of what it is that we see in 2022, all you have to do is do a deeper dive. You could be any place, anytime, as long as you have internet access. You could do all the research you want and go way back into the origins of specifics that you would like to have an understanding about. So for me as an educator, I'm at the point where there is not a excuse that can be used for individuals not doing the research when we have the technology available to us to actually do the deeper dive. If you have a question, Google search and YouTube has an answer. And with bringing up the questions, there are going to be more questions that come. And so there's more information out there. Obviously, you have to vet the sources of said information, but here it is in 2022. How can we, throughout society, continue to really make excuses for not having the information that we seek if it's actually currently in the palm of our hands via the technology that we have access to. Like literally, for me, I'm at the point where there are no excuses that can be offered to say that a student who is in a economic position classified as low income cannot learn is ludicrous. Are you serious? There are individuals currently around the globe that don't even wear shoes. That, again, I'll use the example, know multiple languages. So for anybody to say that people,
Yeah, poverty is an
quote
indicator
unquote,
of
our little
your
people
intellect.
can't learn is ludicrous. They've been learning from the point when they were born and being exposed to things and growing up around their respective influencers, parents, family. They've been learning. The question becomes, who are they being exposed to, who is instructing and disseminating specific type of information, and what is this information, and how do they make it relevant, and how do they make it creative and fun and engaging? Where's all that coming into play, right? Because if it is that you're boring me half out of my wits, you're boring me out of my seat, and so this is why my behavior is the way it is, because you have not presented me with what it is that I need from an individual perspective now, because every student is different. We cannot think of our students as being a monolith. None of us are a monolith, right? And so if it is that we are really and truly making sure that our students know that they are respected and valued, then we should treat them as the individuals that they are. They're going to have differences. Yes, as educators, we have our duties to disseminate the information. It's how it is that we disseminate the information that is going to determine whether or not it's effective dissemination or ineffective dissemination of information. Now, the role of the student is very important as well, right? They could choose to do their homework or they could choose not to do their homework. We all have choices to make on a day-to-day basis. So, all together, everybody has a role in this. And so no pointing of the fingers can really come about because, if we try to analyze every single student, that would take a whole lot of time, a whole lot of resources. But knowing that effective dissemination of information to our students is the goal, and never placing the excuse that they cannot learn based on certain conditions is an absolutely must do. Otherwise, here's the thing. If I'm saying, oh, they can't learn. If I'm an educator and I say a person can't learn, I'm in the wrong field. Plain and simple.
Absolutely. Well, I think what you've described, in my never to be humble opinion, is the better teacher. And just like there's better doctors, better mechanics, better sculptors, better painters. Some people are better than others, whether it's because they've had opportunity to be exposed to get the better tools, the better, everyone cannot lift 100 pounds. Some people can lift 200 pounds. I'm not one of them. I mean, just there are limitations. It is to the advantage of the one with the limitation to know what they are for their own good. I benefit from knowing what I am not good at. I don't deceive myself into thinking I'm good at something that I am not, because I'm the only one that's really going to suffer from that unless I'm providing something for someone else. Then we'll all suffer. We'll all suffer together. And I think sometimes we have to be willing to demand better. And so if we're talking about education, just like we're talking about government and we're talking about laws and rules, one thing about education is education is basically run by the government. They're government schools. It's the largest sector of government in most towns.
That's the big plantation.
Is education. But we could call it a plantation.
No, the government.
The government, we're on the plantation.
That's the big plantation.
The government
Yes,
is running the plantation. The problem with that in the United States Even if you want to go back to strange fruit, when black folks was hanging from trees, so that we make it plain enough for people to understand what I'm talking about. Even if we go back and look at the history, as of right now, 2023, what's today's date? October the 26th, one day before my little sister's birthday. We can vote. Now, there's local boards of education. For the schools to be in the conditions that they're in is less a reflection of the administration and more a reflection of the people that the administration serves. Because some school districts are clearly better than others. And so, once again, we have the government that we deserve. We have the education system we deserve because we put them there. And if we don't put them there, shame on us, because the capacity to do so is on us. We have the capacity to change these people. The current one there now was put there by people in the community. True?
True.
All right. So it's up to the community.
I don't want to sound like Donald Trump, but I think that the last election in Hartford was rigged.
Well, that's what Hillary Clinton said about the upcoming election. She said that
rigged.
yesterday.
It's already rigged. They didn't even vote yet, Hillary. Can you wait?
You know, everyone that loses an election, myself included, believes that they were gypped out of the result. The results couldn't have been that bad. They stole votes from me. You know, that's just the loser syndrome.
And in America, based on my experience, that's called signs of a sore loser.
Signs. It is. Every loser is a sore loser because most people don't like to lose. But at some point, you got to get over it and move on.
But when you change the words, see, this is what I'm talking about. I learned so much from just, I've always exalted older people. Nelson Mandela said, and I use this quote all the time, this is my life. I never lose, Stan. I either win or learn.
Absolutely.
And you see the difference in that?
Well, the learners, the ones, oh, wait a minute, wrong button here. The ones that were not victorious have not yet learned how to learn. They're stuck in the trauma of losing an election, which I can tell you can be very traumatic.
If you want to process it like that.
You have never run for public office.
I have. I ran for city council and lost. I didn't have a budget, just my name.
Were you?
I was under Yolanda when we had the all
Castillo.
The Castillo. I was one of the council people.
All right. Well, I stand corrected on that.
But I've seen other people respond like you have or react like you have.
Right. Because when you run for public office and you lose your job running and you spend all kinds of money running and you put your life into it, it's not perfunctory where you're just on a ticket running. And if you win, and I'm suggesting that you were, and you just, if you win, you win. If you lose, you don't. It's a principle kind of thing. If you really, really run, when you don't win, there's a lot out there. It's like being in a boxing ring. Your face is punched up. Your sides hurt. It's not trivial. It may be trivial to the fans and the people betting on you. But for you,
the casual observer,
this not casual. It's lost.
Life and death,
And it's not just that you lost. It's a personal loss. You lost. You were defeated by someone who was quicker than you,
who bested you,
who bested you, outlasted you, had an endurance. Maybe if you'd have run the extra mile, maybe if you'd have got more sleep, maybe if you were more sharper on your game or thinking, there's a lot that you have to decompress and get out of it. And so I'm just suggesting it's depending upon the level of the race and who it is that's in the race. It's not that easy to just say, let's move on.
Well, brother, indigenous teachings teach us that if it's meant for you, can't nobody take it. And if it's not for you, then you'll never have it.
Well,
So it was.
biblical teaching teaches that too, but
It's not your.
Absolutely.
It's not your. It's not your. It's not up to you to
Mhm.
to say that. You know, what you have to do is like you said, so eloquently, is you have to go back to the drawing board and figure out, because it's a lesson for you to learn. You know what I'm saying?
you do
You learn,
learn.
and when you run,
You
I'll
learn.
tell you what. When you run for office, you learn a lot. You learn a lot about you,
You learn a lot about yourself,
but
and you learn about
more,
those who you're representing
more
too.
importantly, you learn a lot about people
Right. You learn about those you're trying
and
to represent.
their alleged loyalty and sincerity and honor, and you learn a lot about that. That all comes to the forefront because you quickly see that you're going to have to look at people quite differently from now on, because they have no honor, they don't have any integrity, they don't keep their word, you know. So yeah, and you know,
Yeah,
politics is the
people
art
are
of deal
people.
making. Yeah,
Well,
politics
politics,
the art of deal making,
it is the art of deal
and
making.
so you have to learn that. For me, a deal could only be good if it's good for the five things that I always talk about. You know, it's good for the families, good for the community. You know what I'm saying? Good for the people who live there. You know what I'm saying? It's and so it's quite different. It's quite different. We look at things quite differently, Stan.
Well, you know, electoral politics is nothing like people think it is. And as you talk about the deal, you know, so there has to be levels and rules of expectation from the constituent. And unfortunately, the constituent has been conditioned through the schooling system to be
Socialization.
compliant, docile, and accepting. And when you
Absolutely.
speak up, folks little head goes sideways and say, did they miss the training? They're not supposed to be speaking up. What are they doing? Tell them to be silent. And so, you know, it's really up to the constituents to take back their power and hold accountable the people you elect to represent you. And if they don't
Absolutely.
do that, they will receive whatever's in the best interest of those in power, instead of those in power serving the best interests of the people. Because as Alfonso always says, is it, because you have your 5 rules, he has the one. Is it life affirming?
You contradict yourself
Listen
though
to this, right?
when you speak, Stan, because you keep talking about you know, how you can do this and you can do that, but you know that I read I think it was in Dr. Joy DeGroove's book, or one of the books that I read, that a comedian quoted something. He says, "We're not free, we're loose." And you know, things are not like that. And this newfound freedom that you and Dr. Maya keep talking about, I want to know when it started.
I'm trying to figure out what freedom you're talking about.
Well, you
We're
keep talking about
power.
doing all these things like
Power.
we don't have
The
any
power.
obstacles in the way or anything like that.
We-
And I want to know what
can
that's all about.
Can I say this, Lou?
Of course,
Lou,
yes.
The power that resides within individuals is something that is referred to as like a locus of control. We have control over certain things.
Well, hold on a
Right?
second,
So
Dr. Maya. Listen to this. Stan is talking about that, right? But you know, and you contradict yourself a lot too, because you keep talking about that, but you know you're saying the same thing. You know that from the womb, you're being trained. You're not being educated to do certain things. So how can you expect a different outcome when the training is for this? But you keep talking about like we can do this and this, but you've been trained your whole life to behave, to think, to speak in a certain way.
Well, then why aren't we speaking that way?
We are doing that. That's exactly what we do.
Lou,
That's my
there's
point.
no contradiction. There is when you're examining the spokes of the wheel, each spoke is different. Together it makes up the wheel, but each spoke is unique. And so there are different lanes, there are different avenues as one talks. There's the system, but the system is built on something. The system is built on being placed into it by an electorate. Leslie cannot get her job because she wants it. She can only get her job if 5 out of 9 people vote for her. Those 9 people cannot get their seat because they want it. They can only get those seats on the Board of Education because a man who was elected by the population put them there, or 4 of them can get there from the same people that put the singular man there. Now, these people, if their only course in life is to wind up like they have been trained, then all of us can just go on about our business, go get us a coffee and a donut and call it a wrap.
Isn't that what's going on right now?
No, that's not what's going on. That's what's being attempted. You're the one, along with some of my other friends, talking about the Great Awakening. You cannot have a Great Awakening if people aren't coming to some sort of realization that they need to step up out of the training that they're talking about. So don't sit there and talk about how, because someone has been trained a particular way, they're somehow cast forever in that light, because that's just not true. And that's not what we're presenting. So when we talk about those things that are, it is not to say that we're being contradictory because we acknowledge them. You have to know what's wrong in order to apply the fix. And the fix is much easier than rewriting the Constitution and tearing down the structures of the military and getting rid of the prison industrial complex.
What you call it, the fix?
The fix is simpler than all those things.
The fix.
The fix.
Is that like capitulating?
No, a fix is not a capitulate. I don't capitulate when I fix my flat tire. I repair what is damaged. Capitulating is
the system like your flat tire? Is that a good example?
Not for you. For me, it works.
I'm just asking. It
Yes.
works for you. Okay.
It actually, I think it's the best system because the system is just that. It's no different than this phone. It's just a phone. It's not grand. It's not great. It's a phone. It's just a system. Haiti had a system. It has imploded. There is no government in Haiti. One day the Ukrainians were walking around drinking coffee and tea on the promenade. Next day, Russian missiles are falling on them. Their system is imploding. The United States system, to some degree, is imploding. The system is not sacrosanct. It's just a means by which to accomplish things. And you can sit back and complain about what's going on, or you can try to affix. You could try to apply a fix to the system. The system doesn't work from the top down. It works from the bottom up. That's just the fact of the matter. But if the bottom up people don't do anything, then the top will roll down on them. And then they sit down and they sit down and let it happen.
And that's what has happened.
Right. And now, if you let that happen, so be it. If I come to your house and go in your refrigerator and eat the food and dare you to say something, then you won't have any food. I will. Right. At some point, people have to get tired of being walked on and rise up. That's what happens on the plantation. The plantation folk get tired.
I think it's called
and they run up to the big house and they burn the house down and kill everyone in it.
A la Nat Turner.
This is how systems change. They don't change because you are mad. They change because someone got up and made a change. No one gives up power.
Is a change a fix?
A change can be a fix if we're talking about redirecting the ship. We don't get rid of the ship. We're not going to take apart the ship here on the open sea and let it sink. We're going to have a mutiny and take over command of the ship. But we don't get rid of the ship. The ship is the system. Right. It is not mad at anybody. It's just a machine. Who's running the machine? It's not that deep. Who's running the machine?
We've got to, I tell my students this, right? So there's the KISS strategy or mnemonic.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Keep it strategically simple is what I tell them, right?
Strategically simple. I like those words better than this.
Strategically simple, right? And so, where it is that our conversation has really gone in so many different directions, which is a beautiful thing. I start to think about Monday's
That look like
guest that
moonshine.
Jonathan had on, Miss Faye, and she pointed out that even civics is not even taught in a lot of school systems. But think about this: all things are
Luke
politics.
talking about my tea being moonshine. I'm sorry, Dr. Meyer. But this is not moonshine. It's
Listen,
orange
folks,
tea.
and he's drinking it in the mason jar, just like they do in them shows.
That's because I've been colonized. The only thing that let us drink from is an old jar. Can't get no glasses for him. Let's stay and drink out the old jar. Get the jar for him. He don't let him eat and drink out the fine glass. We're sorry, Dr. Bowen. Go on.
It is the traditional container of plantation living.
This,
All right.
this is our people.
So,
I'm being culturally
Dr. Meyer
sensitive.
jumped right in. Look at it.
right. So, I was just, taking it all in. And, where it is that Ms. Faye mentioned the lack of civics as one of the things that is not being introduced in terms of exposing our students. So think about this. Based on your very vivid description, Stan, it comes from the bottom up. If at the bottom you have no foundation in terms of your exposure to what this whole politics scene is all about, then you're not going to push back. But when you have that exposure and then you start asking additional questions and diving a little deeper, there becomes a building of confidence in you speaking about specific things because you know more about it. But if I don't expose you to that over the course of the 13 years that I have you within my system, then that becomes another political voting cohort that is unaware of how this process works, which is great for me, right? So I'm not going to secede my power by introducing you to information that could have you challenging my power. So it's strategic. There's nothing overly complicated about this. Nothing, right? And so, if I digress just a little bit, some things that have been spurred as questionable in regards to the pandemic and us shifting our education to remote and online environments has created a reawakening of a couple of things, right? Do we resolve this issue or solve this issue through remediation, or do we use accelerated training / learning techniques in order to get our students back to a level whereby the learning gaps are closed up? And so I found in Newsweek a article in August of 2022 stating that, in Nashville, they're using what's called an accelerated scholars program. With this program, it allows for intensive tutoring to go on with students for 30-minute increments, 3 days a week with the same tutor, right? For consistency. Now that is a good process. Consistency is key. Now in North Carolina, they've used $10 million of their pandemic relief dollars to actually establish a similar program where they are engaging 500 tutors to be linked with 4,000 students. Now, here up north in Massachusetts, they've created a statewide strategy called the Accelerated Roadmap, which means that district leaders, principals, teachers, basically those that are going to play a role in this whole educating process, will allow students to be more geared towards grade level work from an accelerated perspective to get them back on pace based on the pandemic. So it's acceleration. in terms of the process and not remediation in order for us to actually bridge these gaps.
That's a beautiful summary, Dr. Maya. Thank you for sharing that. Before we go on, I just want to thank Stan for that wonderful discourse, that 101 politics 101 that he gave a little while ago. That was right on the money, Stan. Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Anytime, though.
Look at you, man. Hey, Dr. Maya, listen, man. I feel like Stan is trying to learn us something today, man.
I know. I'm just trying to.
I'm just messing with you, Stan. But you are correct. It is from the bottom up.
It is the bottom up.
And I agree from that. And unfortunately, it is from the. It is kind of being, from the. It's more now from the top up, because, like you so aptly stated, because we allow it to happen like that.
We allow it to happen.
Hence the power, Lou. Hence the power.
Yes.
What are we doing with our respective power? And then transitioning into the collective, aka the community, to then add pushback on those things that we deem to be an error. Okay? Mm-hmm. So, it's a process, but we can do what needs to be done, but we gotta individually decide on it and then get with like-minded individuals to make it happen. It's not rocket science, but it does take a change of thinking, as well as followed up by actions or behaviors that align with that. That's all it takes.
Well, the issue
easier said than done, but it's doable.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
You just got to put the time in and the effort, and make the necessary adjustments and sacrifices that you have to do. And that's what I'm going through now, that process of transitioning, where I feel like when I first started going to physical therapy, the doctor said, I'm going to fix you, and you're going to go back to being broken 4 or 5 times because you're used to being broken. And now we got to get you used to being fixed. And that's how I kind of feel. I make a lot of good progress, and I feel really good. And then I kind of go back into my old habits, which is bad eating and not hydrating enough, not reading enough, and then you kind of catch yourself and you get back on there. So now I'm having more success because I can do it for longer periods of time, and that going back has lessened quite a bit. So you just have to be able to put in the time.
There's a lot. It's a heavy lift. Mm-hmm. It's a heavy lift. We understand the simplicity of getting to the moon. It's rocket science, but then again, it isn't. We just need enough force to get this tube into space, break gravity, and head toward the moon. But actually doing it is a monumental task. Our community is up against an avalanche of issues, chief of which is poverty. People are in survival mode. We know it needs to be done. Getting that done is going to take some real serious strategery, some heavy lifting, some understanding.
That was George Bush's word. Strategery.
Strategery is a word he used, but it's not George Bush's word.
It's supposed to be strategy. There is no such thing as strategery.
Strategery.
Listen, I want to share a joke with the audience, if it's okay with you, Stan. It's
Go
a
ahead.
safe joke. Mm-hmm. So here it is. So Albert Einstein and this Indian brother were going on a long trip. So Einstein
right on the edge with all this ethnic stuff going.
And Einstein looked at him and says, "Hey, we're going on this long trip. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a long ride. Let's play this game. I'll ask you a question, and if you get it wrong, you give me $5. And you ask me a question, and if I get it wrong, I'll give you $500. So the Indian guy said, "Oh, I like that game. Let's play." So Einstein said, "How far is the moon?" And the Indian guy thought about it for a while, and he said, "You know what? I can't give you the exact locations. Here's $5." Mm-hmm. So Einstein said, "Okay, ask me a question." So the Indian guy said, "One runs up a hill with 3 legs and runs back down with 4. And Einstein used all his super knowledge, everything, and he couldn't figure it out. He gave the guy the $500. So it was Einstein's turn to ask the question. And he said, before I ask the question, what runs up the hill with 3 legs and runs that back down with 4? And the Indian guy reached in his pocket and gave Einstein $5.
So he didn't have the answer.
Yeah. You like that, huh?
Wow. You can't ask a question that you don't kind of sort of have an answer to, especially when they're doing a riddle thing.
All them rules was not. All them rules were not there, Dr. Mike. It was just, it's just a joke. It's just to show.
No.
I think it's just to show Indian people were trying to say that we're also very smart. That's all it was. I got one more, Stan. You may
Go
like
on,
this.
go on.
Right. Michelle and Barack Obama were going to this big gala. Huge,
Up on the island.
Everybody was there, man. So they get there, and one of Michelle's, her ex was there. So Barack quickly pumped his chest and said, see, honey, if you would have married him, you would have married a waiter. And she says, no, honey, if I would have married him, he would have been the president. And that's to the power of our black women.
I like that.
That's what's
Yeah,
up.
I like that. It's about finding the right person in your life and in terms of partnership.
To make you grow and everything.
I like
yeah,
that.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, but I have, in my country, in my culture, our women have been stellar. They have done things that our men have been afraid to do. Lolita Lebron went to Washington and shot up the Congress, with a couple brothers in order to bring attention to, our status as a colony, which this was in the 50s and we're still a colony today. And that's why when the war with Ukraine broke out and I heard all these black and brown people exclaiming disbelief and this and that, I said, hey, why don't you share that sentiment about Puerto Rico? Or what the white people call Puerto Rico, we call Borican, right? We have a colonial status in 2022, and nobody ever talks about that, and that's real. That's real right there, because Puerto Rico now, with everything that's happened, is very close to having a situation like Haiti is having right now, where the government has completely collapsed. The people of Borican voted the governor out. They made him resign. And then the politicians on the island elected him to be the representative for Borican in Congress. That's the kind of chicanery they have going on over there.
Well,
so it's not that far from, the stuff that's going on in Haiti. And I think Haiti is really, they put the magnifying glass because they want to bear pressure and shame on that country because it's a black country, not because they've done anything wrong. Don't forget that Haiti was the first country to get its independence from France, and they had to pay millions and millions up until recently back to France for the money that they allegedly lost because of the sugarcane trade.
So they're getting reparations from the people that they doled out
that they enslaved,
diabolical acts on.
Right.
Isn't that?
But don't go too far. Sister, don't go too far. What about the Queen? What about the Queen of England when she died? I heard black people from Hartford talk about I like the Queen. Oh, I'm so sorry she died.
There are people that like the Queen. You have to respect the fact that they liked the Queen, Lou. You don't have to like her.
It's not that. It's just that she is directly responsible for the deaths of millions of black people around the world.
As is.
You know what I'm saying? And we have to be more.
The United States government has bombed countries into oblivion to save a nickel on a gallon of gas. Lou. I mean, all of us got some.
And they're saying that the reason that they killed Gaddafi, the reason they killed Hussein, was because they wanted to change the denomination from the dollar to the gold, and the United States killed them because the dollar is not what protects the dollar now is oil. It's not gold anymore. That's why we're over there.
Yeah, that's that high level stuff. Mm-hmm. But we have issues right here in Hartford
we
could actually work on.
Well, and I think that by bringing some of these issues out, like what I just spoke about,
Right.
it kind of helps people see
Well,
the United States in a more realistic view, and not the United States because you and I are the United States.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But
Right,
the
right.
government and corrupt officials that are doing these crazy things in our name.
That should be enough to get folk upset
Right.
and excited about change. But you said something I thought was very interesting, if I heard you correctly. The people of Puerto Rico
Mm-hmm.
ousted
Yes.
the sitting governor.
Yes.
I remember when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
The people rose up and spoke.
Mm-hmm.
So someone else must be sitting in that seat.
Yes.
But you said that the politicians
Mm-hmm.
sent the ousted leader, the
Mm-hmm.
governor,
Mm-hmm.
to represent the island
Mm-hmm.
in Congress.
Yes.
The corrupt politicians
Yes.
got together
Yes.
and voted to send him.
The corrupt governor there. Yes.
So it would seem that the people did not really facilitate a change of the system. They just got rid of one of the system operators, like putting a new spark plug in.
Well, you know, this happens a lot, Stan. I've seen this happen here in Hartford, in all over the country, all over the world, because I follow this kind of stuff. But it just takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of energy. It just takes a lot of sacrifice to pull off what was pulled off, and then to sustain it.
There we go.
You need
Sustainability.
I mean, listen. First of all, a lot of the stuff that has gone on with Black Lives Matter in this country, they're saying that was funded by two white billionaires, the Koch brothers, right? But there was a point before, because what happened to Black Lives Matter is once one of them got hijacked by the government, they send that out as a blueprint, and they hijacked all. Look at what happened in Hartford. Black Lives Matter is totally like ineffective. Where are they? Because Luke Bronin and Jason Thody made a deal with them, and then they didn't keep it, and now they're out there. They're like in the desert. You don't hear about them no more. You don't hear no protests. You don't hear nothing.
Well, I don't know enough. I don't know about the inner workings of Black Lives Matter.
Well, I'm just saying
to
that
speak intelligently on it. But I would suggest this: Black Lives Matter was doomed from the inception because it was a reaction. Reaction is not a plan for sustainable, ongoing success.
And that's the point that I'm getting to.
Right.
When we have these things, there's never a plan. There's like one goal.
We're
gonna get rid of the mayor, and that's it. And then once you get rid of the mayor, there's nothing else.
Right.
The mayor's out, but what was the plan? Who you gonna put in there? Why? What was the follow up?
Right.
So I was watching. I got up about 5
There's
this
no
morning.
strategery.
There is no strategery, brother. That's correct. So I was watching. This is another thing that we got to be careful of, right? Because I was watching this clip this morning, and it was some white men talking, and they had pictures of Clarence Thomas and what's his name, Herschel Walker and Candace Owens, and people like that. And they were saying that what they do is, white men were saying, look, we have to take the intelligent ones and pluck them, because we don't want a leader developing in there that's going to cause problems. So we pluck him, we educate him, and we make him feel like he's one of us. And actually, because of the contributions that they make, he or she is one of us. You know what I'm saying? But we know who they are, and we use them to do the dirt. When I was in New Britain, the superintendent used a black woman that I knew to try to do harm to me. And then she said, then she could sit back and say it wasn't me, it was her, and that's what they do. Look who killed Malcolm. So we have to be careful with all of this stuff. In politically speaking, Stan, politically speaking, I will stand on my words that I'm not convinced that the current electoral system that we have in this country at a local, state, and federal level is in the best interest of black and brown, in the best interest of people. But particularly, I'm speaking about us black and brown people. But I don't think it has the interest of anyone that is poor. You know what I'm saying? Or even middle class now. Whatever those things are.
You know what's
It just doesn't work.
Interesting about
It doesn't
that?
work.
here's the thing, right? So they say that there's like this top 1%, top 3%, or whatever the case may be. So that means that there's 99 bottles of beer on the wall, which consist of individuals who are not in that category. And we make up the majority of the individuals that actually have the eligibility and right to vote. And so if it is that the 99 are not making their um, their wishes known and then backing it up in order to become more of a voice for the change or the shift in policies and practices, then that we can't really point the finger to us or other factors. Really and truly, again, really taking ownership of self, becoming a part of individuals that are similar minded, like minded, or where have you, will allow for things to actually begin to change, right? And change doesn't happen overnight per se, especially when it's a dynamic change. When it's a shift of power, that doesn't happen overnight. But change can come about with the right types of components being placed at the right time in the right place and actually having a plan for sustainability, right? So you start something, but how are you going to keep it going? If it is that, for example, I'll use our youth as an example. Are we training up our youth to become the next politicians in Hartford? We'll start with Hartford. Born and raised in Hartford, I am. Okay. So I wasn't groomed to be a politician. Now, it could come from the inside in terms of our households, or it could come from the community that you have been exposed to. Where right now is that happening? In your grouping of individuals and your sphere of influence, Lou, who are you all shaping in terms of the youth to become the next politician or group of politicians, right? Have we begun that? Because if we're not getting our younger generation prepared to take over specific types of roles within the community, then who and let's put this out there, white groups are, who are we really blaming? Who's the fingers being pointed at? If we're not doing our part, then how can we actually blame them? They're not responsible
Well,
for grooming up our youth.
Dr. Maya, let me respond to you. The first thing that I will say is that you're absolutely right about the 99 and the 1. The deal with that is now that the 99 is becoming aware of that. All these years they haven't been. Because I look at the United States a lot like I looked at South Africa when they had their apartheid going. You had 30 million whites ruling 300 million blacks. Okay? And so here, that awakening, that consciousness is being developed now, and a lot of good things, and it's happening right here on this show, and in other talk shows, podcasts, and what have you. Information is being imparted that's great and is wonderful, and it's opening portals in your mind that didn't know existed into new ideas and new concepts. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, we're doing it right here. Absolutely.
This is one aspect. Yes, I agree with you, Lou. But again, in terms of a consistent community effort, we need to be doing more.
Well,
Right?
we're not doing
Are
that, Dr.
you
Maya, because we've never done it. So we're
well?
building that. We have to see what that looks like for us. I keep talking about that. What does that
Well,
look like?
it takes, let's start simple, strategically simple. Let's start strategically simple. Gather up youth who have an interest or may not know that they have the interest, but gather them up, have the conversations, right? But it has to be consistent. It can't be a one and done. That doesn't build consistency, right? Relationships have to be formed and it takes time. And this is pretty much a no brainer for many, maybe not so much for others, but it's going to take time. If it is that we're starting off with these conversations for kids that are 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and keep that momentum going. By the time they turn 18, guess what? They can begin to engage in becoming part of Senate, city council, and all other types of political type of arenas. Now, if we haven't done the
There,
preparation, we can't expect that they would have an interest because we haven't done a job to expose them. How does one person or anybody get a natural tan? They have to be exposed to the sun. If we're not exposing them to the sun, they're not going to be tanned, or rather ready to be passed a baton, if it is that we would like to pass a baton, for them to start
that's
to
a
run their leg of the race.
that's a key point right there, Dr. Miner. I've been involved in. I'm 62. I've been here since 1967. I've seen a lot of stuff, and one of the things that I spoke about on the show and in public is that we need to start grooming our children, for those jobs. Now, I would be contradicting myself if I was to say that I would like the politicians to educate and prepare our youth for the next generation, because we have a bunch of nobodies and a bunch of crooks and a bunch of corrupt people. I wouldn't want them educating anybody. But what I would say is that we need to start developing leaders, not necessarily in politics, but just in general, people who can lead in any direction. You know what I'm saying? We have to start changing the language that we use to identify our needs. I don't need no politicians. I need our people to be in leadership and be effective. Because we have people in Hartford that are right now we're not effective. They are in leadership positions.
They're in leadership
Lou,
positions, but
They
they're not
impact
leaders.
our community
Right.
in a very negative way.
But
Right? So
Lou,
yes, Dr.
if
Mike.
we change, here's the thing: we're in a system that uses certain words. If we change our wording that does not align with what system that we're in. So, for example, I'm in IT, but if you used a car mechanics terminology and tried to apply it to IT and it doesn't fit contextually, then we're not going to be speaking the same language. And so I
You don't speak
understand
the
what
same
you're
language
saying.
now.
Hold on for a second. I understand where you're saying that we need to be able to reframe or redefine how it is that we use specific language. However, we didn't make this system. So if we're going to be speaking apples to apples, we got to come at them with apples to apples, not apples to oranges, because they'll be like, well, I don't understand what you're saying or what you're trying to say. So the communication aspect has to be there, whereby we're speaking the same language, Rosetta Stone, so that nothing can be misconstrued. Okay. So, but when it is that we introduce new language, that has to be consistently broadcast so they know exactly what we're talking about.
That's what
But
we're
it
doing
still
now.
has to align. Hold on for a second. It still has to align to what has already been established as the system. Again, if we're on a ship, we can't dismantle the ship because we sink. We all sink. But the introduction of change in order to redirect the course of the ship has to be there. But we got to be speaking apples to apples and not apples to oranges. And a lot of times what ends up happening is that others will say that we're speaking apples to oranges to them. And so we have to understand where it is that the system is communicating from a contextual perspective, and then convey our messages accordingly so that we begin to change the direction of this ship. Otherwise, we're just adding distractions that don't talk to the actual core components or elements that we're trying to address and write.
And that's a wonderful commentary, Dr. Maya, but I don't subscribe to any of it because I'm not interested in aligning with any system. I'm interested in building, in continuing to build and create the system that I've already started.
Well, I
You
mean,
know what I'm saying? And people, and I'm doing okay because in terms of communicating, the system that we have now does not communicate with us. So if we create another system that doesn't communicate with this one, what's the difference? We're still not communicating.
Okay, so let's use the poster child for systemic change. Well financed, loved, by all accounts, was at everybody's party, A-lister, in every movie scene imaginable, until he decided he wanted to run for president and got on the escalator. Donald Trump. Everybody want to be like Trump. Folk couldn't wait to get his book and go have a handshake with him and go out to dinner with Trump. Yeah, everybody want to be like Trump. Trump money.
Got a nice reception in Hartford.
Right. We go up at the mansion.
No, when he went downtown, remember? He was down at the, I think at the museum down there, the Children's Museum.
This before he became president?
Yeah, when he was on the tour. He came here on his presidential tour.
Well, I mean before that. I'm talking before president. Once he got on that escalator, he was not liked. He was run out of office. All right. There are some who would say if he would have just at least admitted one wrong, things might have been different. But he wouldn't. He just wouldn't. And I say that to say this. He was going to go in there and clean up the swamp. He was going to change the system. All right. The system is the compliant few get through. The outsiders, the malcontents, the rebellious, they don't get to be in the system. And that works well if you're going to be an outsider. But that's what you will be, an outsider. Language is used to communicate. If you change all the words, the only people that are affected by it is yourself and whatever group that follows you. That's a system. So-and-so's a member of a church. He don't like the pastor, so he starts his own church.
That's,
he got his own little church, his own little following, and the people come to the church and they use special words and special handshakes
what is the religion that you practice, Stan?
Special rituals.
What is the religion that you practice, Stan?
Just a minute. And special rituals, and they have their whole little circle, but they're no longer embraced by the whole. Now, if we're going to change the political system, I'm with that. But you can't just change the words that people use to communicate because we don't like the way they define a thing or what they call it. Until we get to name it what we want, till we get to call it what we want. We can have those side conversations in a silo, but when you go out into the real world, you have to speak the language of the people who you are with.
Apples to apples.
So here's the other thing about words, and I've asked you this question before, and I'm asking the audience. Black people in this country have been called black, colored, African American, Negroes, the N-word, and a bunch of other things.
By other people.
How many of them names did you attribute to yourself? How many of them names did you give to yourself, Stan?
I didn't pick my own name.
And how many did you accept?
I don't accept any of them.
You accepted all of them because when they define
No.
I'm
not telling you that. You're telling me that.
Okay, so
I don't accept any of them, Lou.
Okay.
The people could call me whatever they want, and often do.
Right.
That means nothing.
And that's exactly what I mean by that.
Right. The only thing I adjust to is being called an a-hole. Because if when people call me that, I'm more than willing to oblige so that I don't disappoint them. So I will become. I don't mind that type. If that's what they want me to be, then trust me, I'll step up. I'll step up to the plate and hit a couple of grand slams. But in any other word, I'm not defined by what other people want to label me, Lou. Those things don't bother me.
Yeah.
That's what they call folk. And until you, so I consider myself a human being. That's what I go by.
Okay.
I'm a human. Others want to label me as a particular kind of human. I am a human being. Not to be confused with
what
canine.
What does the government say you are, Stan?
It doesn't matter what they say I am.
Well, let's just,
I don't know.
I consider myself.
When you answer the questions on the
I consider myself the government.
on the census,
I have a long
what
said
do you
that.
describe yourself as when they ask you?
I didn't answer the census.
When you fill out a form that has the ethnicity or race, what do you?
The one that they select of options is black.
And do you accept that?
It's not a matter of me accepting it, Lou. It's what's on there.
Right. You see my point now.
No. You're not making your point. I'm not.
I'm
No.
completely making
No,
my
you're
point.
not complete.
If you check that box,
Lou,
if you check that box, you accepted that label. And that's all it is.
This is what I'm talking about in terms of communication and language.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If I don't accept the word, caliente is the word for hot, right?
Yes.
I don't speak Spanish. So there's a whole language that is rich and diverse that communicates the depths of ideas and notions in Spanish that English can't touch.
It's much more expressive.
Right. So I am at a disadvantage because I can't communicate. I don't know how to speak that language. So it would behoove me, if I'm going to be around people who speak Spanish, to be able to communicate in their language. That doesn't mean that I accept it now somehow.
You're learning to grow, not to survive, and it's different.
Lou, the system has selected for the benefit of people of color a way to identify you from the majority population. Now, next week it might be brown skin. The next week it might be people of color.
You know, I've heard other people say that they identify
Right.
as human. Why don't we ask the government to put that as one of the options on the form?
Because those things don't. I wouldn't waste my time trying to get human on a form. I have better things to do with my with my time than because it makes no difference.
Well, don't you want to know? Don't you want people to know how you identify? So
But
they can identify
Lou,
you
it
the
doesn't.
same way?
No, it does not matter. The
No?
government isn't care whether I call myself black, whether I call myself Negro. They don't care. All they want to know is, how can we classify all of these people in groups that serve our system? They call themselves whatever they want. This is what we're going to put. Black, white.
So they put you like in a slave category, like slave 1, slave 2.
If that's the way that's how.
I'm
That's
just
how.
asking, Stan.
My
Lou,
goodness.
yes.
You
So
just
now
went to
you know what?
extremes.
I am a slave in their system. Now, if that's how Lou categorizes it, then it works for Lou, and
No,
I will.
it was a
Lou,
question.
no.
It was a question.
The question.
It wasn't definitive.
The question is a hypothetical. I
Yes.
always teach people
Yes.
never debate a hypothetical because it always changes. The answer is never sufficient, so the person mastering the hypothetical changes it. I gave you my answer, but my answer was not
Exactly.
sufficient, so you keep hitting me with variations of the same question.
I'm just asking you questions, Stan, to
But
clarify your
right.
Your,
I consider myself
uh-huh.
a human being. The government may consider me to be black. When I fill out my Social Security paperwork, I put the black box because I don't want to jam them up. Send them. We don't have a section for him. He's a comedian. I tried that once. I tried that once.
Didn't work out.
It didn't work out at all. It was on the night of where you're supposed to do the great assembling and bring your money to the government, and you put your IRS check in the mail. I wrote in big block, bold letters on the outside of the envelope, broke this year. About 3 months later, they served my employer with a tax warrant.
Nice.
They got their money
Why didn't they do that to Trump?
because Trump is not like me. I'm on the plantation. He's running one. So there's a big difference. That's why Trump will never, ever see the inside of a jail. The people are delusional. That's not gonna happen.
We need to make a little bet right on the TV right here.
You think he's going to jail?
I know he's going to jail. I'll bet you
If
a
anything,
coffee and a sandwich, right?
House
A tea and a sandwich right here
House arrest
live.
at most. House arrest at most.
He ain't
that's
going
not
to
even,
jail.
That's not even a jail sentence.
Don't let
If
that sister in
anything,
New
house
York get
arrest
him.
at most.
You hear me?
If that.
You know what?
If
That
that.
Don't let that sister in New York get a hold of him.
You see
she
what
trying to get.
Let
you
me
know
tell
what
you
she's doing?
something
She's
about
doing
her.
it the right way. She's going after his kids, and that's
this
gonna
is
break
what's
him.
going to happen. Kanye got on the air the other day and lost his natural mind. He talked about a group of people that you don't talk about.
That's too bad. He talked
Now
about
he's
what,
being.
Who
now,
you talking about? The Jews?
Now he's being deconstructed. He thought he was untouchable.
Well, he thought he had money.
He hasn't had
Lou,
money.
we trying to generalize. We generalizing, Lou.
So
Don't call nobody out.
right. He
I ain't afraid of him.
he is just like anyone else on the planet. All right. Now, New York real estate and towers and buildings. There's a whole. If you think Donald Trump is the end all, the be all, the beginning and the end of how you value buildings and evaluate buildings, and that he's manipulating people, then he must be like the entry level kid on the block. Banks do this. Real estate does this. She's opening a can of worms that she is not prepared to deal with.
I think it's good that
And-
she's opening it though.
Well, bless her little heart. Back in the real world, she might wind up having a car accident. Mark
Hey.
my word.
And speaking of not going to jail,
Donald Trump ain't going to jail. Someone says here, not going to jail.
I didn't hear you, Stan. Are you accepting my bet of a sandwich and a tea that he goes to jail?
I'll treat you to a sandwich and a tea and whatever else you want.
That's what's up. Yeah, it is right there. Dr. Maya, you coming along for the ride?
At most, house arrest. But
He
going to
ain't
jail,
going to
seeing
jail.
the physical quarters of a prison cell, nah, it's not happening.
What is he gonna go to jail for? The people who are obsessed
Hey,
with Trump.
not only may he go to jail, if they do it the right way, Donald Trump could be the first president that sat as a president and is shot for sedition. He tried to take down this.
Sedition?
Yes, he tried to take down the government of this country, and that's called sedition. That is an act that's punishable by a firing squad. Yes, sir.
in a
Look it up.
constitution that you don't believe in.
Well, let's see.
You can't have it every which way but
My
sundown.
brother, I'm just saying, man.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to hold white people accountable. That's all. If
We
you
all
and I
need to
went
be
to
held
Washington,
accountable.
Stan, and did some foolishness like that, it'd be no question about lifetime in prison and maybe even shot to make an example of us.
Well,
Let's make an
guess
example
what?
of him.
They're not gonna make an example of him. They're not gonna make an example of him.
And all this freedom
You know,
talk.
if,
And I can't believe
if
you're
Donald
saying that,
Trump,
man.
I'm not here to defend Donald Trump. If Donald Trump was guilty of something, right? Because of course they're trying to get him on some sort of New York real estate. Anything they can get him on, they're trying.
His charity foundation.
Okay, so the charity foundation. Now, if they're so hard to try to get Donald Trump, what are they waiting for? Just go get him
It's a
and
process.
put him process.
No,
Well, you know, he has
No,
to
no,
go
no,
to
no, no, no.
court.
I'm talking about January the 6th, Russia, whatever it is. If he's guilty, it seems to me that there's a whole lot of people want to see him underneath the jail, but
They
they
can't.
keep moving the bar to find
Because
something.
people are mad.
it's
Listen,
newsworthy and
white
it's a-
people are
it's
mad
a
at Donald Trump
distraction to us
because he's
at
a
the- at the
crook
same
and he's
time.
accusing them
I'm
of
sorry.
stealing. That's what they mad at, Stan. He's a thief.
Newsworthy.
He's a crook.
Distraction.
You know what I'm
Newsworthy
saying?
and a distraction.
Yeah.
That's all he is.
That's
It
what they
makes
mad at.
money.
They're not mad at him for
Makes
stealing.
money.
They know he was stealing, Stan. All them senators, President Obama, the other, all of them, Clinton, they all knew he was stealing. This guy had on his ledgers in New York in his apartments specific instructions not to rent to blacks.
Yeah, he didn't want no black
or
folk in.
Hispanics.
He
Yeah,
didn't want
or
any
whatever they call
whatever
themselves.
you're calling us. What are we? Black, Hispanic?
I have no idea, man. I only know what
Two
I
names
am.
that you don't like. So
But
if he
had
didn't
that.
want no black folk living in his building, I'm of the mindset. You don't want me eating in your restaurant? Put it on the door. I can go somewhere else. I don't have to live in your building.
Right. I
Trump
agree.
Tower ain't the only place to live.
I agree. But he owned a lot more than Trump Tower. Trump Tower was like his
But Lou,
fancy place.
Lou. Donald Trump isn't worth the time to mention and bring his name up. I only use that as an analogy, as a touchstone. He ain't going to jail. He's not going to jail. And we have elected officials who have spent their entire time in office focusing on Donald Trump as opposed to the people who actually elected them. I didn't elect anybody to go and focus on Donald Trump. I elected people to focus on making Hartford better, making Connecticut better.
Yes, I completely agree.
We can't start throwing out every politician who cut a deal or made a little. That's what they do. They're politicians. I don't expect politicians to be anything but politicians. That's what they are. They're not there to be leaders. They're there to work for us and move our agenda forward. And sometimes moving our agenda forward means you got to compromise with someone who wants a different agenda. That's what politicians do. They're not there to be righteous and sacrosanct and upstanding. They're there to cut deals. That's what politicians do. That's why they're loathsome, Lou.
Well, Stan, you know, I have to.
Sometimes you want a good attorney who can get your behind out of a sling.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's his job. And if he loses, I lose. The politicos in our city need to fight for Hartford.
Right.
That means it's going to come at the expense of maybe West Hartford.
Or somebody.
Hey, go get us our stuff. I mean, that should be how we look at it. That's why we put them there.
Real quick, I just wanted to mention, we were talking about mental health, and you said that you can be committed very quickly. Don't forget that several years ago, we used to have Norwich Hospital. I could drop you off for the weekend and get paid $75 and pick you up on Monday. Drop you off on Friday, have you evaluated, and pick you up on Monday, $75. And people used to do that.
Like I said, it's a dangerous road to open up an avenue where mental health is just a good mental health check. The right person says that you're not doing well. A mandated reporter says you're not doing well.
You could be
evaluated. And next thing you know, you need to calm down, Mr. Delgado. Calm down. We're gonna put you. You know.
That's something that's done in the schools for students.
Right. Next thing you know, you're jammed up.
What a wonderful segue, Stan, for this mental health thing, because I've been in conversations with Andrew Wood, who's an authority on mental health, and he's agreed to come on the show, I think, the week after the second, but we'll nail that down. He wants to, it's going to be great. Andrew's a phenomenal leader in our community. He's been a leader in mental health, and he's going to talk a little bit about, where you can get some help at for children and for adults. What are some of the symptoms that we can be looking for? And I think it's just going to be awesome to have Andrew on the show, imparting some incredible information, to the community. And I've always felt that he was phenomenal. And you talked about mental health in this country. Mental health in this country has been looked at as weak. It has been looked at as a woman's disease. When men have it, they make you feel weak. They talk, they make you feel like you're castrated. You know what I'm saying? So I'm so happy that, a lot of celebrities and athletes are coming out to speak about it. It's just I'm super excited to have Andrew on.
That's good.
So I wanted to put that out there.
There's a big stigma. I'll look forward to the conversation with Andrew. I have hard questions. I wouldn't let my children talk to anybody in terms of mental health unless I knew the stability of the person sitting in the room with them.
That's what's up. That's important, man.
You don't just go pick up an analyst here or there. My mother was a child analyst, so no, mental health is very dear to my heart, but some mental health professionals are better than others, and you don't want to surrender your head space to nobody. Right.
Like some teachers are better than others, right? So we've got the two baskets going on here.
Some teachers
some
connect.
parting
better with others. They're not better because when you say better, make it seem like they're better than other people.
They're not better than other people. They're better at teaching.
Right. Well, I think that. Well, this is where I change the language. I think some teachers they connect in a more spiritual way, or to use your word, in a better way. They connect better. But I've had teachers that have been phenomenal as a whole and individually dealing with students. They have not been that good. So
we need the whole package.
We all have our limitations, Lou.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
We need the whole package.
Even myself.
Right.
Absolutely.
Even myself. So I mean, we all have our limitations. But in parting, what I would like to say is that in this political season that we find ourselves in, please understand that local politics plays a major role in what it is that we receive. So do your due diligence and exercise your long fought right to vote. And so have a great day, everyone, and a wonderful rest of the week. And I'm looking forward to doing this all over again. Same time, same place, same Zoom room.
That's what's up, Dr. Maya. Thank you so much. And to our family out there, thank you so much, man. Big shout out to Madaris Jihad. A big shout out to our ancestor Olga Mili, who was here. And to all the other great leaders that we have in our community, and to all the young people, keep striving or learning. Let's have a great day and make the best of it. Peace, family.
All right, my friends. We'll see you next time. You all have a great rest of your day. We'll see you then. Bye.
My name is J. Stan McCauley, and I do business as Light Source Productions. I provide professional services in the area of strategic video communications. First, what we do is we help you craft your message using what I call the rule of the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. We do event documentation, content acquisition, full-scale productions, editing, and of course distribution through our social media television network. And with social media, video is more important now than it has ever been. Whether you're talking big business, small business, nonprofit, church, or just an individual. Let's say you plan you're planning an event, a wedding, whatever the case may be. But let's say a big event, but no video. And you spent all this time, all these hours to put this event on, and maybe 100, 200 people attend the event. But more important than that is that thousands could attend by watching it on social media. But of course, you don't think about this until after the event is over. You can't afford not to capture it for social media. And despite what people think, I am affordable. Give me a call. Let's plan your next video project and share it with the world on my social media television network. I promise you that you will have the attention of one person, me.